Hello, everybody, and welcome to another audio drama office hour with me, Lauren Chippen, a typical artist, here to talk about how to make audio drama. Let me know if you can't hear me or if anything is weird with the stream. I think I did everything right this time, but you know what? It's always a little bit of a struggle. And hello to Aaron in the chat on YouTube. Hello to Keyrex in Twitch chat and Pumpkin King. Oh, great, Pumpkin King. I'm glad that you're back because I did keep your question from last stream to talk about this time. So, oh, good. Hi, Nikki. Okay, everybody can hear and see me. Fantastic. The light is like doing something a little bit strange, but that's just because it's very sunny today in Seattle, which is lovely. So, if you have just like stumbled upon this or you're new here, I make fiction podcasts, and every month on the last Friday of every month, I hold these sort of like public office hours so that folks can ask me questions about how to make audio drama. I have gotten some questions in advance, so I'll be answering those, but I do like to prioritize questions in the chat. So that, if you have like follow-up questions or if I have questions for you and, that'll help me answer your question, we can kind of have that back and forth. And if you are watching on the Patreon stream, I do prioritize that chat. Usually I can get to everything. But just as an FYI, if you're not signed up for the Atypical Artist Patreon for free yet, you should be atypipals.com. Check it out. Hi, Mike. Drive safe as always. Glad that we can keep you company on your commutes. And yes, Aaron, that is a Star Wars robot in the background. That's BD1 from Star Wars Jedi video games. He's a Lego set, and I love him very much. He watches over me as I work, which is nice. Okay, I am going to get to some questions here. Let's see. Okay, yes. So last time I was streaming, I think I was just like doing a chat. Pumpkin King on Twitch had a question, and I figure we can start there. So, was there a moment where a character you were writing or voice acting that was more difficult to write play because you didn't want them doing what their character would actually do? That's a very interesting question. And I mean, I think, I don't know, I always want my characters to kind of misbehave. Like, if that's sort of a question of, do I not approve of something that a character is doing, and do I not like performing or writing those things? Like, I think the answer ultimately is no, because yeah, I like kind of putting my characters through the ringer, and I think as an actor, it's particularly fun to act in something that's very different than you, right? So most recently, I was in my show 2000 and Late, a show that I made last year that should have a season 2 coming sometime, probably, hopefully early next year, maybe. And I got to play two characters in that. One sort of a burnout 30 something, and the other the demon that's possessing her. And like they both behave in ways that I absolutely would not behave. And I find that very fun and very cathartic. So, and both as a writer and an actor. I don't know if that answers your question. I don't know if I like understood your question correctly. If I did not, please let me know. But yeah, I mean, I think the difficulty sometimes comes actually when you're writing or acting something quite close to you. This is something that I learned, and thank God for Julia Morizawa, who plays Dr. Bright in the Bright Sessions, in writing and performing Sam. She's sort of an avatar for me in a way to explore my anxiety and my panic attacks. And in one of the episodes in the first season, she actually like has a panic attack, and doing that was like quite difficult and not very fun. And if Julia hadn't been there to kind of like just be the solid person that she is and sort of, like be the scene partner that she is, I think I would have had a very, very hard time. And that like took me like a little while to kind of like come down from. So I think sometimes the stuff that's a little bit closer is actually more difficult. Again, I hope that answered your question. It looks like we've got another question in the chat. Were any projects of yours that started one way in one genre, for example, and completely morphed as you worked on it? Um, no, not in genre. Um, Something that I talked about a little bit on I think it was January's office hours was how audio drama is like a great medium to tell a story in, even if that medium even if the story sort of started in another medium, whether that's like a play or a film script or a book, it can be, written in such a way to be made into an audio drama. And the great thing about audio drama is that you can control all of it. You can, make it in a lower budget than a lot of those other things. And I've experienced that, right? Like I've experienced something starting usually as a podcast, because that is honestly like what my brain thinks of first. Is if I come up with an idea, if there's a story I'm working on, I'm always going to be thinking about it as an audio drama first and foremost, because that's just kind of like my default. And there definitely have been times in which I've started that way, and then in developing the story, I realized like, oh, okay, this actually is a book. That sort of happened most significantly with my project Desperate Hollow, which I started developing as a podcast back in like late 2018. It's about these two outlaws who grew up together, and through various happenstance, one of them ends up shooting the other, and then they don't see each other for 7 years, and then when they come back together, they sort of have to deal with like all of their feelings. That's like a queer Western romance thing. And I'd initially conceived of it, and actually, Erin, this actually does apply to your question, in that it was initially sort of written as like this punchy, fun Western adventure rom-com, like a kind of, Romancing the Stone but with cowboys type thing. And the book is not that. So yeah, in the process of like writing the first season and kind of trying to pitch it out and trying to find funding for it, I had started to write little prose scenes just for myself. And then I was like, wait a second, like there's all of this interior stuff that I want to explore with these characters that I can't really do in audio, just because of the way that I like to write audio, right? Like I don't tend to not lean on, that's the wrong word. I don't tend to use like narration or internal monologue. I think that there is great value in that stuff. And I think that there's a lot of genres that really benefit from things like internal monologue or narration, but that's just like not the way that I like to tell scripted stories for the most part. Not to say, never say never. So in really exploring like a character's interiority, books are like a great way to do that. Like and Desperate Hollow is a dual POV, and so you kind of get both sides of the story. So that changed mediums and also changed genres. If you want to read the original pilot script for that show, it is available to our paid patrons, atypicals.com. Every month I release like an aside, which is basically like a story, a pilot script, something that like might not be canon, but is sort of within a universe that I have created. And yeah, the one that's coming out on April 1st, because it's the first of every month, is going to be an additional New Year's Day missive that is canon. And that I think people are going to like it. I'm excited for it. That's less than a week away, and I've been like waiting for it in great anticipation. So yeah, I think it's important to like let things morph and change. Even Phantom Pulse, actually, the show that I'm currently working on about a 90s rock band that can exercise ghosts with their music, also kind of initially started a little bit more as like a horror comedy almost, like not quite a sitcom, but like it was a little bit lighter. And then as I started to like really get into the characters and stuff, I was like, oh, this show is dark. It deals with a lot of really dark stuff. And so that also kind of morphed a little bit, though it still has like a punchiness to it and a fun to it that I think is not so different from the way that it started. But yeah, I think in terms of letting projects grow, for me, if something isn't working in a particular project, the thing that I immediately start to examine is like, is this the right medium for this thing? Like, does this want to be an audio drama, or does it want to be a book? Does it want to be a film script? Does it want to be a play? Does it want to be a video game? Does it want to be a series of short stories, a webcomic, whatever? Because sometimes I truly believe that like any good story can be told in any medium. Like you just have to find your angle for it. But I also believe that oftentimes stories have sort of like a true heart in terms of medium. Like to me, like, The Bright Sessions has books, which I love and which I loved writing, and has been optioned for TV a couple of times. I would love to see it make it all the way to the small screen. I think it would be fun to do like a Bright Sessions graphic novel, or like, a video game or something, animation, whatever. But to me, like that show in its core is an audio drama, and will always sort of be an audio drama in the same way that like it would be great if eventually Desperate Hollow was turned into an audio drama or a TV show or whatever, but like it will always sort of be a book first and foremost, even though it didn't start that way. So I hope that answers your question. Pumpkin King. It does. Oh, good. It does answer your question. I hear sometimes people struggle with character deaths or big character decisions, but they push through it for the best story possible. Yeah, I mean, like, that's not to say that I haven't had like strong emotional reactions to, I mean, uh, so earlier this week, I'm songwriting with Evan right now, for Phantom Pulse, and we do songwriting every Tuesday afternoon. And thankfully, we were like songwriting for like 1 to 4, and then like at 4, I actually had a therapy appointment, so it like worked out really well. But like we spent like 3 hours writing a song about suicide, and that was definitely like tough. Like it's a song, right? So it's in metaphor and all that kind of stuff, but it's like spending 3 hours like working with somebody, sort of talking through like a character who's in that place, right? And who's having those thoughts and ideating that. And so like, yeah, that can be like emotionally heavy, even if like, no, I want the character to express this thing and I sort of want to say this thing. I think the fact that I guess I like started on hard mode with the Bright Sessions by being like, I'm going to tell the world about my panic attacks, these things I've never told anybody in my life about, by playing a character as panic attacks. I think just kind of like helped me understand art as a vector through which to like explore difficult things and difficult topics. In terms of character death and things like that, like I mean, maybe I'm just sick and twisted, I don't know, but like that's the exciting stuff. Like there have definitely been character deaths. I think, if you're a fan of the Bright Sessions, you know what I'm talking about. And like there's, some other things coming up in future stories that involve characters dying. And the thing that's Nikki, that emoji is very good. I don't even know what emoji that is, but I love it. Yes, yeah, that is fair. So yeah, that kind of like listener reaction or like reader reaction or whatever it is, of like just exhausted exasperation or like all caps screaming at me or whatever, like that to me is the lifeblood of making something. And so like when I have the opportunity, that said, I never ever want to kill a character or like torture them for shock value, right? Like I think that sort of being like, we're going to kill off this character because it's going to make the audience freak out is like not the way to go. But when there's like a story reason for it, and you get to sort of like build up to it and do it, then it becomes, to me at least, like a very satisfying thing. And yeah, I love that stuff. I think what's hard, like with the Bright Sessions death in particular, and with a death that will occur in something I'm working on now, like I love all my characters, right? And I like playing with my toys. And especially when it comes to, like, for instance, the actor in the Bright Sessions. I don't know why I'm being coy about it. Everybody, I think, watching this knows who dies in the Bright Sessions. But yeah, Ian McEwan, who plays Owen in the Bright Sessions, is like such a, like, that character became a bigger character because Ian is so wonderful to work with, and because like he brought so much to the character that I loved, that was so different and unique and not at all what I expected for the character. And so kind of like writing toward that. And like I think that killing him was the correct like story choice and character choice for that character's arc. And at the same time, it's like, but now I can't write for Ian anymore, and like I don't get to write this character that I love, and like that's kind of a bummer. But I think that it's always outweighed by the fact that like, by that sort of satisfaction that you experience in making the right story choice even when it's hard. Yeah, exactly. Like all the hard work and build up paying off. Exactly. Yeah, I think again it's like, this is why you shouldn't kill characters for shock value, because it's not going to like feel earned. It's not going to feel, and that's not to say that like, there are people who like didn't like the choice that I made in the Bright Sessions, and that's totally fine. Like you can build up to it or feel good about it from a story perspective, and people can still find it like jarring and shocking and things like that. But like I think if you feel good about it and it feels like, I think in that particular situation, there are certain times in a story where like when we were breaking the story for the AM archives in our writer's room, and we were kind of like branching out all of the different we like really wanted there to be like consequences. We wanted there to be, like sort of this it's a story of like retribution almost. And so like, what does that look like? And like, are you actually getting justice and getting retribution and all of that? And like, I think that we explored a lot of different pathways, and ultimately we just like kept circling back to that point. And sometimes you have that in stories where it's like you walk up to something and a character death or something like that, and you're like, oh, wait a second, no, like I love that character, I don't want to do that. And you sort of step back and go back a couple. I don't know if you've ever heard this advice, but some book writing advice I got once was, if you're like all of a sudden stalled out on a scene and you like can't write more, delete the last 3 paragraphs and like start again. And then if that's still not working, delete the last 6 paragraphs and start again, and just kind of like keep going back and forward. And sometimes, you do that and you're like, oh, I'm hitting the same point again and again and again. And that's what it was with Owen. It was just sort of like, okay, like this is just where all of these paths are leading. Like this is the thing that makes sense. And so that's usually like a good sign that, doing the big seismic thing is the right choice. I actually lost it and frantically texted my friend sobbing when he died. So yeah, fun times, loved it. I'm so sorry, Key-Rex. I mean, like, that's a I'm sorry to have made you suffer, but also like that's the biggest compliment, right? Like if you can make art that moves somebody to like have a big emotion, or like tell a friend about it, or like, yeah, just have a big emotion. Like that's really what it is. That's what I'm looking for. And like, obviously I never want to like leave people in like despair, like even with 2008, which is sort of like grappling with our modern moment and dealing with a lot of like dark stuff. I never want to like leave people feeling like totally hopeless and like worn out. Like, God, what TV show am I thinking of? Or like, one of my favorite shows the last 10 years is Barry, the HBO show, the Bill Hader show. And like, there were times, or even like Breaking Bad, I think has this too. There are times in like watching those shows where you're like, I feel bad now. Like I feel worse now after watching that episode than I did before I started it. And there's like a degree to which like I like that feeling, right? Because it usually means that the art is inviting me to like have a conversation with it that is going to be interesting and fulfilling. But as an artist myself, like I want to invite people into difficult conversations, but then also be like, but I'm holding your hand. Like you're not alone in this. I don't want to like leave you feeling completely terrible. Of course, you're not going to accomplish that all the time. Sometimes people just feel terrible, but that's always the aim. Hello, Yazin Mara J. What are we talking about? We are talking about making audio fiction. I'm talking about sort of like big character deaths and what to do when you have a big character death. Oh yeah, Ella, Black Mirror. Black Mirror is a great example of a show that I always feel worse after watching. And again, like I think that has value. Like Black Mirror invites you to question a lot about our reality and to examine our relationship to technology and to each other and all of that kind of stuff. And so like I think that those things can certainly have value. I just don't want like all of my art to be that way. And so when it comes to things like character deaths or like evoking an emotion that's like very, very strong, I always want to make sure that I'm doing that thoughtfully, I guess is the best way to put it. Erin, is both a writer and actor for a lot of your work. Do you ever ad lib? Yeah, I mean a little bit. Like I definitely ad libbed a little bit in 2008 because I recorded a lot of that show by myself, because I was playing 2 characters and a lot of the scenes were just the 2 of them. I would like record Harper's side of the conversation and then go back in and record Havoc's side. And sometimes like as Havoc, I would improvise and ad lib. All of the Breaker Whiskey episodes. Breaker Whiskey is a show that I did for a year every weekday. So 260 episodes. And the first year is kind of like a continuous story. And then the feed from there has been monthly releases where I get a listener message and then respond to it. Those are all entirely improvised. I don't write those. So definitely I do like lean on improv and ad-libbing sometimes. It's funny, like as a writer, I don't really know what like the equivalent of like ad-libbing would be in writing, because then you're just sort of like coming up with a different way to say something. I do always keep a document. This is maybe a little bit unrelated, but I always keep a document for all of my scripts of like random snippets and deleted scenes and alts and things like that. For Phantom Pulse right now, each script actually has a second script because there's like a lot of like, and this is stuff that I could just like let the actors improvise. But like personally as an actor, when I show up to a scripted thing, like if I'm asked to improvise like on the spot, like I'm gonna freak out. Like I don't love improv myself, like doing improv myself. If I sort of know that going in, then it can be really fun. Like I've had auditions before where they're like, okay, here's kind of the premise of the scene, now improvise the scene. And those can be really fun, especially if you have a good scene partner. But like I never want to kind of do that to my actors of like, okay, like we kind of need some background chatter here, so just like talk amongst yourselves in character. Like that also ends up being kind of like legally tricky, because if an actor is improving too much, they have a claim over writing credit and things like that. So like there's like practical reasons to sort of like create a fence for your performers. But it's also, I think, just like for me, like a courtesy. Like I wouldn't want to suddenly be asked to like improvise sort of background chatter. And so like for Phantom Pulse, because it's like an ensemble of 5 people and they're all like best friends and like constantly talking and things like that, there are a lot of scenes where like they're all chattering and then 2 of them kind of like wander off and have a conversation, but like the other 3 are still continuing their conversation. And like I'm going to record all of that so they can kind of be in the background of the main conversation that we're focused on. And so like every Phantom Pulse script also has a supplemental materials script that is basically like outlining, you know, sort of like the ad lib framework. And I always tell my actors, like, I'm not a word perfect writer. If something feels weird when you're saying it, like put it in your own words, like rephrase things, drop words, you know, whatever. Feel free to improvise lines. Because again, it's sort of like creating those boundaries and making sure that like the actors have the capacity to explore and to play if they want, but that you're not like asking them to perform labor that is not their job, if that makes sense. I know that that sort of went off of your original question, but there's never any wasted writing. Like always keep all of your writing, including like, you know, stuff that you like ad lib, but then like don't use in the edit, like, you know, transcribe it and throw it in a document somewhere, because that's just like, you know, you might end up using it somewhere else, or it's just like, I think nice to have. And that there is a lot looking back now in making the Bright sessions where I'm like, God, man, I should have kept that first draft of the script, like, because I think that people would enjoy reading it and I think it'd be like fun to talk about. And for the most part, like I don't have those things because I just like didn't keep them. So I think that it's always good to keep an eye on those things. I don't know about the show, but the worst movie and breaking character I've watched is still Alice. I don't think I know that movie. Okay. What does your research process look like for audio dramas, whether it's for the story itself or the technical side? Oh, great question, Ella. Yeah, I have a like shelf on my desk that is all of the books that I sort of use for research for my current projects. And so like there's an etiquette book from the 1920s that I use for New Year's Day, although like now we're getting into the mid 40s and so it's like not applying quite as much anymore. I've got a bunch of books on demonic possession and fighting dark magic for both 2008 and Phantom Pulse. And then I've got a bunch of like Western history and things like that for Desperate Hollow, because those are sort of the stories that I've been working on the most over the last couple of years. I mean, like my approach tends to be to sort of write the script first and then do the research, or write the book first or whatever and then do the research, because I kind of want to get out. I don't know about you, but like sometimes if I go down a research rabbit hole, like that is what I'm doing and I'm not actually writing the thing. And I just sort of end up spending the entire day like reading Wikipedia pages for various subjects. And so in order to kind of like ensure that that doesn't get in the way of actually like writing, I will just create placeholders. And so like a good example of this is Phantom Pulse. It's a band on tour. And so it's like a road trip essentially through the Midwest. And like initially I sort of just like mapped out what the story was and sort of had placeholders of like, okay, they're in this type of place, big city, small town, whatever, this type, they're doing they're dealing with a haunting in this type of building, you know, B&B clinic, whatever. And then came like, okay, I'm actually going to like map this out. I use this website called My Scenic Drives, which is incredible for planning road trips. You can actually see the entire like Breaker Whiskey road trip map, because like I made one for for Breaker Whiskey. Like that is how I kept track of that show. And like then what's fun in that is like sort of once you have the basic skeleton of your story and you're kind of like figuring out what the real world sort of logistics are, sometimes that those things can like lead to other discoveries. So like with Breaker Whiskey, for instance, making that road trip and being like, okay, she's going to drive here. And now let me go to Roadside America, which is another website I love that is just like an encyclopedia of all the weird roadside attractions in America. So you can just like look up a state and kind of look around a map and click on things. And then it's a matter of like figuring out like, okay, did those things exist in like 1965? It's the same thing with Phantom Pulse, right? Of like, okay, like, you know, was this already a thing in 1998? And with New Year's Day, obviously, like that's incredibly true. Like, you know, one of my considerations for the next episode is like, which takes place in 1955, is like, how often were like people talking on the phone in 1955? Like people had phones in their homes, but were they like, you know, socializing that way? And that's something I haven't really done research on yet because I'm not done with the first draft of that script. So yeah, when it comes to kind of the like historical accuracy, I guess, in terms of research, like I like to just put placeholders. I mean, even with Phantom Pulse with the ghost hunting stuff, right? Of just sort of like putting placeholders of like some of the technology that some of the other ghost hunters that they meet use, and then going and doing a deep dive on what like actual ghost hunters use, right? Like what are the things that people who believe in the paranormal like think work, right? And like how can I sort of like make that work for my world? So it can look a little bit different also depending on like if you're dealing with like a real thing or like not a real thing. And yeah, like it's interesting. The demonic possession book that I have ended up not being that useful for 2000 and late because it was like, it's sort of like the serious like journal of different talks and case studies about demonic possession. And so it was like a very sort of like self-serious look at it. And with 2000 and late, it's just sort of like a demon's possessing her and it's like goofy and whatever. Ended up being useful for Phantom Pulse, right? Because it's like, okay, well, what do Christians think about sort of demonic possession and about ghosts? Not that there's no demonic possession in Phantom Pulse, but like, you know, what is somebody who grew up religious? What might they have been told about sort of like the paranormal, and how could that inform these characters? Hello, Various. Welcome. Glad you could join us. So yeah, that's a very long-winded way to say like I write the script first and then do the research. For technical side of things, I mean, if you have like specific questions about that, I'm happy to answer. Because yeah, I don't well, no, I guess that's not true. Like I always make sure to have my sound designers review all my scripts to make sure that the things that I'm doing are going to like read in audio and that they're going to be technically possible and all that kind of stuff. But I don't necessarily do like a lot of technical research about the audio side of things because like I usually work with great sound designers. And so like, that's not really my concern. Like as long as, you know, I feel like it will work in audio and I think I have a pretty good judgment at this point of what will work in audio. I don't tend to do very much technical research. Every book I've read has suggested a notation while recording for noting best takes. Do you end up listening to the other takes that you don't mark in editing, feeling overwhelmed listening to it all? Oh, great question. Yeah, Pumpkin King. Yeah, real world continuity can be tough. And there are certain things where I'm just like, I don't care. This is not going to be historically accurate. Like with Desperate Hollow, it's like I wanted to feel authentically like a Western, but like it's not historically accurate. It's not historical fiction. That's not the point. So I think also like figuring out kind of what's important to you and yeah, how best to sort of like balance believability with like realism, you know? Like actually, yeah, using Phantom Pulse as an example again, one of the things I've been talking to my sound designer about a lot is like, he's also a musician, is like, okay, like, you know, they're trying to figure out why their music can banish ghosts and like, you know, explain vibrations to me again and how the frequency travels, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And like the difference between like speakers and amplifiers. And like, there's a lot of that kind of stuff, like sort of within the Phantom Pulse lore. And ultimately, like, I understand now, like the actual technical realities of like the difference between a speaker and an amp. But when it comes to like how those things work for Phantom Pulse, it's like it's a little bit magic. Like, yeah, they have these theories about, you know, why their music in particular and the vibrations of the music and the vibrations of the spirit world and all that kind of stuff, but like it's made up. So it's like, you know, I can sort of use the real world stuff as like a good jumping off point for creating my own lore. Okay, no specific technical question. Just curious to see how others handle research because I'm a research fiend. Yeah, I mean, like, I also like love getting into research, and like this is why I have to create sort of like a process for myself that wouldn't like swallow all of my time whole. Um, but yeah, speaking of feeling overwhelmed, Newton Holt's question about takes. Yeah, I do have like a couple of different systems for notating takes. You can see some examples of that in my production handbook, which you can get at atypicalartist.co/resources. You can get it for free. And that's got sort of an explanation of how I notate scripts for shows that I'm not actually editing. But when I'm doing the dialogue edit myself, sometimes I'll just like write little like kind of scratch notes in my notebook, and I'll use highlighters and stuff to sort of say like, okay, I liked the bulk of take 2 the most, and then like this line on take 3 and this line on take 1 was fun, and then we got pickups on take 4 for these things for technical reasons or whatever. But yeah, I usually don't end up listening to all of the takes. I mean, it sort of depends on the project and how many characters are in a scene. Like if I have a scene with like 5 people and all of take 2 is like really, really solid, let's say. Take 2 is usually what I end up building most of my dialogue edits off of. It's usually like the sort of strongest end to end I found with most actors. I'll sort of like build off of that. And then like when I hit a line where I'm like, I think we got a better read on that in take 3, I'll like jump into take 3, pull that out. And, you know, sort of do that piecemeal for the things that come up in the main take that I'm building off of. That said, I do record all of my scenes live as much as possible. So like even if we're not in person, we are on Zoom together or whatever. And so people are playing off of each other. If you're just getting like lines from actors that they're recording themselves, then you do have to listen through every take. And it's also like ends up being a lot more burdensome in my experience, because then you have to like match takes to the other takes from the other actors and kind of piecemeal it all together. And that's why I like really running through full scenes. Like I was talking to somebody the other day and they were like, well, yeah, but I mean, like when you have like a 38-page scene, like in the Bright Sessions or whatever, like, or like New Year's Day, it's like 2 people, it's one conversation, you know, like you're not doing all of that in one take. And it's like, no, we are. Like when you listen to a New Year's Day episode, like Brigham and Andrew read through the entire script all the way through in one take, right? Like, and then we do that twice, and then we do some pickups, and that's the show. And so it's like each take is 35 minutes. And like, yeah, so usually with something like that, I sort of have a feeling of like, okay, this is the take that I'm going to build off of, and then I'm going to take these chunks from other things. So if you are getting overwhelmed, I think like, yeah, taking good notes during recording is crucial. I think it helps to go through all of the scenes, like all the way through live as sort of like a building block, at least like twice. Because like the first take is sort of like your rehearsal, you're getting, you know, everything kind of out. And then the second take, people lock in. And then when something is like hitting your ear weird, or like, you know, you got a better take, just like bringing those things in one by one as they come up, rather than like listening through every take and trying to figure out which bit from each take you're going to eventually edit together. But like, that's just the way that my brain works. Your brain might work differently. And I will say that like, it might take you a while to find your editing process. And even when you do, it's going to change depending on the project. Like there definitely are projects where I'm like, well, I've got to listen to this entire take again, even though it's 30 minutes, because like, I actually don't know what I want anymore. And this is often the curse of like working with actors like Brigham and Andrew on something like New Year's Day. They're actors that I've worked with for 10 years. I know them really well. I know how to write to their voices. They have amazing chemistry. They're both incredible actors who find such interesting things. They're great scene partners together. And so like with the last episode of New Year's Day, for instance, like I listened through all of the takes like 4 times each, because it's like there was such interesting stuff in all of it that it was like really hard to kind of figure out like, okay, what's going to be the best overall story arc that I can create with what I have, because there's so many different pathways to go down. So that can be hard too. And that is also why I think it's very, very important to almost never do more than 4 takes of anything. I always do sort of like 2 at minimum, 3 is the sweet spot. 4 is good depending on how long the scene is and kind of like what the scene involves. Like usually I like doing like sort of 1 is rehearsal, 2 is sort of the main thing. I've given a bunch of redirects. We sort of lock in, get the full thing. 3, I usually like turn up the knob on a couple of different things or like throw a couple things at them. And then a take 4 is like I give them a completely opposite note from like what I actually want from the scene. Or I just say like, you know what, you did something interesting on this last take that is like so unexpected. Just lean into that more. And the point of that is that I'm not going to use I'm not going to use all of take 4. Like a good example is like, 2 characters sort of at odds arguing, right? And like a thing that I might say in like a take 4 to an actor is like, okay, instead of arguing with them this time, try to seduce them. But like all of the lines are exactly the same. And like as a scene on the whole, it's probably not going to work, but you might get like 2 really interesting line reads out of that then you can throw in to kind of like inject something interesting into the scene that like take 4s are usually based on like what I've discovered in the process of doing the first 3 takes. And then also sometimes depending on the thing, I'll just be like, actors, do whatever you want. Like, let's just go crazy. So yes, I think that would be my advice on sort of like helping yourself in editing is not to do like a million takes of everything as well, because then you're just kind of setting yourself up for a headache. And also like after 5 takes, you're just not going to be getting as much good work anymore. Like, yeah, you're just not. Okay, various. In terms of takes, are you the one that does the editing or you send off the raw audio? It depends on the show, but for the most part, I do all of the dialogue editing. I think the only show of mine that I didn't do dialogue editing for like an atypical show, like writing and directing something like Bridgewater or Passenger List, like there's an editing team on that. I'm not involved in the dialogue edits at all. But for I think for atypical shows, Maxine Miles maybe was the only one that I haven't done the dialogue edit for. But I've done the dialogue edit for. I did the dialogue edit for all of the Bright sessions, including the last 2 seasons. For 2000 and Late, for In Strange Woods actually, which isn't even my show, but I did the dialogue edit for that. That is the hardest dialogue edit I've ever done in my life. That show was very complicated, and no 2 actors ever recorded at the same time because we recorded it in July of 2020. And it was a musical also, so it was like so logistically difficult. Obviously I did not edit the musical takes, but like I edited all the scenes in between. So yeah, I do tend to edit all of my own dialogue. Like for Phantom Pulse, I'll be editing all of the dialogue and sending it to my sound designer. And it's always raw audio in the sense that like they have access to all of the raw files, and I'm not treating the audio in any kind of way usually. Like I'm not cleaning it up if it's something that I'm sending to a sound designer. But then there are shows like Breaker Whiskey or New Year's Day that I'm also doing all the sound design for the very minimal sound design that is in those shows. Okay. Catching up with some Patreon questions here. J.A. Helling, are there conflicting camps in US UK audio drama? The Great Fiction Podcast Weekly newsletter never mentions you and vice versa. Not trying to stir trouble, just curious if there are divisions by audio drama conference with respect. I thought I was subscribed to the Great. Oh, I think I'm thinking of. Wait, is the title of the newsletter The Great Fiction Podcast Weekly, or are you saying that the Great Newsletter Fiction Podcast Weekly? Because Fiction Podcast Weekly definitely does mention me a bunch. Like they're great about like announcing when we have a new show. They'll like throw up Atypical's resources every now and then. Love them. They're great. If there's a newsletter called The Great Fiction Podcast Weekly, I think I'm not subscribed to that and I don't know who runs it. But in general, like the US UK audio camps are like very tight because it's just like a very small thing. Obviously the UK has like a much richer long-running tradition of making the title of the newsletter is Great Fiction Podcast. I will have to look that up. I don't think I've ever subscribed to that, so I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to look into that. What are audio camps? I think JA just means like sort of different like pockets of the industry, right? Like sort of the different camps, like the UK audio creators and the American audio creators. But yeah, I mean, like I work a lot with Brits. Just heard today actually that two of my pitches to the BBC were both rejected. But I do like submit to the BBC. They do big commissioning rounds like twice a year, and I'm usually submitting with someone. I do a lot of script editing for British podcasts. I one of my first jobs was for like a BBC co-production, Passenger List, and I learned so much from John Dryden, who's like a prolific audio fiction person over there. But I will say that like the UK has a much richer audio fiction tradition, right? Like it is The Archers, which is one of the shows, audio fiction shows that is on the radio there, has been running for like 60 years or something. Like I think it's in like it's had literally thousands of episodes. It's essentially their like soap opera kind of, slice of life radio show that airs every single day, and then sort of on Sunday it's like packaged into sort of one episode that's aired on the radio. And the BBC just in general has been commissioning fiction podcasts for, a long time, both for podcast feeds, but then also the radio. And so like, I think that if there's a sense that like a fiction podcast body in England is ignoring American output, I think my guess would probably be that like they just already have like so much to dive into. Okay, so it is Fiction Podcast Weekly. Yeah, Fiction Podcast Weekly mentions American stuff all the time. Like I always send them my press releases and stuff. They're great about publishing it. They're lovely folks, and they've been around for a really long time. So like it's possible that you just haven't seen, them mention American stuff, but they definitely are. And yeah, if there's, like another newsletter or group of people that aren't mentioning American shows, like I think probably it is just that there's like so much for them to focus on, both in their sort of mainstream BBC commission stuff and then also the independent stuff, because there's also like tons of independent audio drama in England. And so yeah, they are like different ecosystems in the sense of like how they work, where the money is coming from, who's being hired to do what. There are people who work in fiction podcasts in England who like were trained to do that as like young professionals and like in school and stuff, like in college or whatever, which obviously like we don't have any kind of like built-in apprenticeship sort of structurally for fiction podcast writers really, which is like part of why I do this stuff, right? Because we don't really like have a ladder for those things. Oh, Various. Yes. Is there a place to watch these streams after they're live? Absolutely. For Audio Drama Office Hours, they will exist both here on Patreon and also on YouTube forever. For all of our other streams, the playback is just available to paid patrons. Just the live is public. But yeah, I always want to make sure my office hours are available publicly in as many places as possible. You also can subscribe to the Atypical Artists. I'm not forgetting Inside Atypical Artists, I think is what I renamed the feed recently. But there's a podcast feed as well that like has audio versions of my office hours and other streams also that you can find. The best place to find that is Patreon or Apple Podcasts probably. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, J.A. That's a really interesting question, but there's definitely like a different approach and a different history and a different ecosystem. But I will say that like in general, those two ecosystems are like very friendly with each other and like very cooperative and collaborative. That's been my experience. Just want to make sure that yes, we allow US podcasters in the monthly UK Hangout call. Yeah, like people in England are great. I've learned so much from them. Okay, Various had a question. How do you get used to hearing your own voice if you VA an audio drama? This is a great question. You just have to do it a lot. I was talking to a friend about this the other day. One of my best friends here in Seattle is a doctor, and she's also Seattle's just like riddled with teaching hospitals. So she also teaches, and she's editing some lectures that she did last semester to sort of provide to her students. And she was like, I don't know how you do this. Like, I don't know how you edit your voice. Like, I'm going crazy. And it made me reflect on the fact that for the first year of making the Braid Sessions, it's awful. It's awful to listen to yourself speak. Like I couldn't stand it. And then eventually I just sort of became numb to it. And so the answer really is just like you have to do hours and hours and hours of editing your own voice, and eventually it will stop bothering you. If there's a faster or different way to get to a point where it doesn't matter anymore, like I'd love to hear it from other folks. But for me, it was truly just consistent and often, like frequent, and hours of exposure pretty much. Okay, Chris, first time guest. So glad I found this. Oh, welcome, Chris. Want to say it's such a blessing so far. That being said, I have had a call to be in the world storytelling and podcast, but I'm struggling with how to start writing dialogue. Write funnels into inner monologue. Just don't know where the good starting point is for dialogue. Yeah, I mean, like, it's kind of a hard question to answer just because, like, I came primarily from acting. And so, like, to me, dialogue is like the easy part, you know, and like the writing my first book was such a challenge because I was like, wait a second, like I have to like describe what people are seeing and doing and feeling and thinking, but I just want to write the conversation. So like, yeah, there's an extent to which like I don't know the best way to learn how to do this. Whereas with like prose writing and stuff, it's like I've really struggled with that and had to kind of like create mechanisms for myself. But I think one of the best things you can do is sort of become a student of human speech. And by that, I mean, something I find very, very helpful is watching my favorite TV show, movie, whatever, where I can find like the script of that TV show. Like for instance, like I love The Pitt. Like The Pitt is fantastic. And you can find the script for the pilot of The Pitt online. And like I like reading the script of something and then watching the episode while reading the script and kind of seeing how dialogue reads on the page versus how it reads actually when spoken, because sometimes there's like more of a disconnect between those two things than you realize. And that was something that was really helpful for me in the beginning of my career, was sort of like understanding like, okay, if this line sounds a little bit awkward on the page, that might not be true for when it's actually spoken out loud by an actor. It might really, really work. And the opposite is also true. You can write lines of dialogue that are fantastic and poetic and wonderful. And it's like, unless you're writing, I don't know, Hannibal, like it's probably not going to sound like something that a human being actually will say. And so you need to kind of find the more human way to say that. If you haven't watched Hannibal before, or like Deadwood or something like that, something that is like incredibly elevated dialogue in the sense that like it is not trying to mimic human speech. So it's like if you're doing that, that's sort of like a different discipline. But if you're trying to like make characters that feel real, make conversations that sound real, Dawson's Creek. Is Dawson's Creek also kind of elevated dialogue? So I actually never watched Dawson's Creek. Like for whatever reason, as a young person, like that show kind of just like passed me by. But I do know that it was like fairly dramatic. Or like even like something like Gilmore Girls, right? Like I was a devotee of Gilmore Girls growing up. And Amy Sherman Palladino has like a very specific way of writing dialogue. It's like incredibly fast paced. It's full of pop culture references. And it's like very, very dense. Like those typically in film and TV specifically, you have a minute a page. So for like an hour long drama like Gilmore Girls on a network, it's going to be 44 minutes, right? Because you need to leave space for commercials. And so most scripts are going to be 44 pages. But like famously, The West Wing and Gilmore Girls were the two shows in the early 2000s that like had scripts that were like 65 pages for a 44-minute episode. And it's because the people on those shows talk fast and they talk over each other, and they're speaking in kind of a way that like probably most people won't speak in the real world. And so like that's its own thing. I tend to try to be like a little bit more naturalistic. And so, yeah, I think like reading scripts while watching a thing can be very helpful. And then also like going to a coffee shop and like, don't be like creepy about it. Don't like record anyone or anything, but like bring a notebook and like listen to the conversations around you and just like make a note of how people speak. One of the first things that I do when building characters is figuring out sort of like what's like one idiolectical quirk that they can have. So an idiolect, we're familiar with the word dialect. A dialect is sort of a regional way of speaking, right? Cultural way of speaking, whatever. But your idiolect is like your specific accent, right? So like my idiolect is distinct from yours, and like, never the twain shall meet. They're their own things. And so like, for instance, for the Bright sessions, to use like that as an example, I sort of, had like a bullet pointed list of like, Dr. Bright speaks in complete sentences with intention, chooses her word carefully and like sort of always very even keeled. Sam has a lot of aborted sentence beginnings, so it's like, you know, like, well, well, I like that kind of thing. A lot of like M dashes. um, uh, Chloe's always having two conversations at once because she's telekinetic, so like that's, or sorry, telepath, so like that's sort of its own thing. Caleb is a teenager, so he uses ums and likes more than the other characters do. So like finding like those like tiny little things. And something that I found helpful was like sitting in a cafe and just sort of listening and sort of realizing like, oh, interesting. Okay, that person uses that filler word, which I don't use. Like I use and but other people will, you know, have other filler words, and those things can sort of help you understand like what is going to sound natural, or what could sound natural in a character. And then like most crucially, making sure that you're reading your scripts out loud after you've sort of like written a scene. I think that is the best way to kind of feel if the dialogue is going well and is right. And even better, once you have like a full script, if you can gather some friends and just like read it out loud. They don't have to be actors, you know, just like invite some friends over for like a pizza, and read your script out loud. That will also tell you a lot about dialogue. I tend to not write outside of my home very often because I speak aloud while I'm writing, because I'm you know, want to see how the lines actually feel in the mouth and sort of how they sound coming out. So that is a very, very long-winded answer to your question, but I hope that there's some interesting nuggets in there that will be useful. Okay, Varys, what software do you use to edit the audio? I use Adobe. Oh my God, I forgot the name of it. I almost had Premiere Pro, which is their video. I use Adobe Audition, which is part of the Adobe suite of products. If you are not currently using Adobe, don't. That's my advice to you. I was a music major in college and sort of like American Studies, Film Studies minor. And I learned Adobe Premiere Pro and Adobe Audition in college because that is what my college computer had, like the, you know, the free software that we had access to. And so then when I started the Bright Sessions, I was like, well, I already know how this works, but Adobe is a terrible company and the subscription is way too high. So like, don't do it if you're not in there already. If you are getting into sound design, anything like that, then Pro Tools tends to be the thing, the sort of the industry standard for sound designers. If you are doing music, Logic tends to be the thing that people use. And I also know some people who sound design in Logic. But Audacity is a great free recording software. And I use Audacity to record like when I'm on my PC versus my laptop. And then Reaper is a program that I have not used very much, but has a great free version that you can do a lot in. And I know people who sound design everything in Reaper. So I would sort of look into Reaper and Audacity to start. And then if you get more serious, learn Pro Tools. Don't bother with Adobe at all, please. Nikki, my script writing class went over dialogue yesterday. Prof basically went over everything you just said. Oh, fantastic. One follow-up, is there a program out there that helps to structure dialogue on paper, such as formatting in general? Yes. Oh God, I now have to recommend another company, or say another company that I cannot recommend in good faith. So the industry standard for film and television, and therefore in America at least, audio fiction, is Final Draft. Final Draft is a terrible company. Their product is too expensive and it crashes all the time. I do not recommend Final Draft. But if you're like involving other writers or pitching your thing out, eventually things like that, you will need to be able to export into .ftx. And thankfully, I believe it's called Highland or Highlander, one of those. And then I think Celtx, CELTX. Those are two, I think, free, or free with possible paid versions. Script softwares that will export to FDX. So they are compatible with Final Draft. So I think if you're looking for like a good script writing program, I would look at, Highland or Celtx. Oh yeah, Fade In also is a program, and that actually like is used in the industry as well. I wrote the first 4 seasons of the Bright Sessions in Pages, the like default word processor on a MacBook. So you can make anything work. I know a lot of audio dramas that you use Google Docs. But if you kind of want that like classic, like down the column down the middle script format, then like I would look into, Fade In, Highland, Celtex, or Final Draft if you love pain. I love that you gave free options. I'm in college right now, so free options are my bread and butter. Yeah, and all of these things are in my production handbook, which you can get for free at atypicalartist.co/resources. So there's like links to all of these and also other software that I've forgotten about. Okay, the demo for Fade In is free. That's great to know, Nikki. Thank you. Mike Reaper is pretty beginner friendly too. It's completely free, but after 60 days, it'll give you a splash screen at launch asking you to upgrade. No features get disabled though. That's awesome. Okay, fantastic. So like Reaper, Fade In, Highland, Audacity. Like that's kind of where I would start if I were you. Okay, I think that those. Okay, great. Various. And I will try to get to the chat in YouTube and Twitch. But if I don't, just a reminder for next time that I do prioritize the Patreon chat because that is just sort of what's directly in front of me. And so if you can watch this and comment live for free. You can sign up for the Patreon for free. And if you want the production handbook, you have to do that anyway, because I do offer it for free, but like, then I want you to know what's going on with Atypical Artists. So yeah, atypipals.com or just patreon.com/atypicalartists. Go check that out. And then it's more likely that I'll get to your question on the next live stream. But Various asks, how do you stay motivated when writing if you get busy with job/life? I'm probably not particularly well equipped to answer this question, because I don't have a great balanced relationship with my work and my life. Writing and like creating stories and things like that is the thing that gives me like the most fulfillment. It is not necessarily my only or even sometimes main source of income. So like there are just like work things that get in the way, certainly. But when it comes to sort of like life stuff, obviously also there are things that come up, but like I'm going to be totally honest with you guys. I don't have a lot of hobbies. I don't do a lot of socializing. Like I do spend most of my free time just like making stuff. And so in terms of staying motivated, like I have such a sort of like pathological need to be doing this that like usually it's I have the opposite problem of like needing to like step away from my writing. But I will say like I obviously still do have the times when I'm like, I don't want to write because I hate everything about my story right now and I'm a bad writer and everything sucks. We love a creative girly lol. And like in terms of staying motivated in that way, I think like it can be helpful to find the fun parts of your writing process. So for me, that's like making playlists and then walking around my neighborhood listening to those playlists and like imagining the little music video in my head of my characters, right? For me, sometimes that's also like writing fanfic. And that's stuff that like I get a lot of fulfillment from because it's not published under my name. Nobody knows who I am on AO3. And so I can just like write without any pressure and like, you know, it's like just for pure joy. So oftentimes like my solution for when I'm like stuck on a problem, like on a project in particular, I'm having a hard time like staying motivated to like work on something that like I have a deadline on, is usually to like write something else or work on something else. Like I've had like a hard time over the last couple of months, sort of up and down, with writing fan pulse scripts, just because like I've been developing the show for 3 years. I finally have the opportunity to actually write it. And like, of course, that's when I get like paralyzed being like, oh my God, what if I can't make it as good as it has been in my head? And so like I've gotten a lot of New Year's Day writing done in the last 2 months. I have written almost all of the episode that's coming out in January 1st of next year. And I've also written like 12 pages for the episode that's going to be coming out in 2029. So like it can be helpful to like go off and to do other things and then come back to your particular project. But if you're just having a hard time staying motivated to like create amidst your busy life, I think just like finding a time in the week, whether it's like a half an hour, whatever, that's just like during this half an hour on Saturday morning before the day starts, or like on your day off or whatever. Or I like getting up early and like doing stuff before I like go to work at one of my other jobs. Just like finding kind of a half an hour where you're like, this is my time, this is my protected time. And even if all I do is like listen to the same song over and over again and think about my characters, that counts. because you do that enough and it will build up and you will eventually start writing. I promise you that. I think you said on your Tumblr that you aren't allowed to read fan fiction for your own works. Is there a reason for that? Yes, there's a great reason for that. It is a huge legal liability. So I have said that like now technically I can read Bright Sessions fanfic because I'm done with that universe. Like I've told the story that I want to tell in that universe. I haven't yet just because like I haven't sort of like found the way into it not being deeply, deeply strange. I would like to someday because I think it'd be fun. But yeah, I haven't quite figured that one out. But yes, for the most part, I love that people write fan fiction of my work. It's like to me the greatest compliment that I could ever receive. But like I always ask like, please don't send it to me. Please don't send it to any of the actors or anybody who works on the show, because then if like a year from now something comes up in the show and you're like, wait a second, that was in my fic, like you could potentially make like a legal claim against me that like I stole your idea. And so that's why it's like very, very important for people not to read fanfic of their own works. And there also have been times too, I mean, like the pals will know this who've been around for a while, where in the Discord we'll be talking about something and like the pals will start theorizing about something and I need to be like, everybody needs to stop right now because you're actually getting too close to like what we're doing. And like, you know, I like go talk about this in the fan Discord because like, you know, you're getting a little bit too close. Yes. I mean, not wanting to be influenced is a huge part of it too. Like that's, yeah, I would never want to like accidentally sort of have an idea embedded from you know, fic or whatever, but it is also just like a baseline like legal issue. I literally just found you through Midnight Burger Patreon. Oh, that's amazing. Where can I find some of your work to listen to? Right here on Patreon. We've got all of our podcast feeds on here. But also if you just go to atypicalartist.co, you'll find links to all of our podcasts, depending on, you know, what you want to start with. If you become a free member of this Patreon and then we have a public chat, you can say like, you know, kind of like what you might be interested in and I can give you a recommendation. If you like Midnight Burger, a good one to start with might be, let's see, I don't know that I have anything as like zany as Midnight Burger in like a fun way, but 2000 and Late might be a show to start with. So if you search for 2000 and Late in any podcast app, that one's kind of zany and weird in the way that Midnight Burger is. It's not as it's a little bit sharper edged, I think. Midnight Burger I find to be like a very like, you know, like sweet, nice, kind show. But yeah, I would start there. But I'm so glad that you found us through Midnight Burger. It's a great show. Okay, we are running down on time here. Well, I hope you enjoy it, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the questions. Okay, let's see how involved the questions are in. Okay, easy one from Pumpkin King. Are those character collages on the wall for the Phantom Pulse characters? They look amazing. Yes, they are. These are my beautiful Phantom Pulse characters designed by Noah Dow, who's an incredible artist who also is on Patreon too. So if you're watching this on Patreon, go search Noah Dow and like sign up for his Patreon either for free or otherwise, because he's just like beautiful stuff. He's also been making some truly stunning New Year's Day art that you can see on Instagram. Love these so much. I love staring at them every single day. Have you done any pod jams, making a podcast episode in a short time? If so, any tips, tricks? Yeah, I mean, technically Breaker Whiskey is sort of a pod jam. Like I would make that show quite quickly. I sort of wrote 2,000 words every week and recorded, you know, 20 minutes of content every week. And I mean, I think my tip for that is like, make it achievable. You know, if you're making a story that is that you know you're going to be making in like a 24-hour sprint or something like that, like don't save your big space epic idea for a different time. Like do something that's going to be like a little bit more straightforward, a little bit simpler. Let the limitations drive the story. That's something that I believe in very strongly, just like in general. Okay, I think there's just one more question, so I am going to answer it from YouTube. And if you sent in questions in advance and you're watching the playback of this, I will get to them next month, I promise. We just had a lot of questions in the chat today. So, and I always like to prioritize those for sure. 30-person space epic with lots of spaceship sounds. Got it. Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Do that. And like make sure that's like fully scored and like, very, very complicated. That's the key. Okay. Netovicious, probably won't be able to get to my question, but what do you think is the most undervalued skill as a creator to promote your project? Something less talked about. Oh my gosh. Okay. I mean, like I could do a whole thing about promotion because like most undervalued skill. That's a really interesting question. Actually, that might be a question that I write down and save for the next stream because I want to think about that a little bit more and maybe talk a little bit more about promotion and marketing because I'm currently working on sort of doing like a Tumblr symposium on how to use Tumblr and using one of these office hours as kind of like a presentation on how best to use Tumblr. Because I think that's a great place to be as a creator, especially as an audio drama creator. And like most people think that it's dead and it's not. But yeah, most undervalued. I mean, like, I think being able to manage your time is the most important thing when it comes to promoting your work. You can sink, and I have sunk so much time into social media and promotion. And so I think time management and being able to organize your time and spend it well and spend it efficiently is actually probably the most important thing for promoting your work. Like the creative ideas, how good the promotion is, all that kind of stuff is obviously important, but like making sure that it doesn't consume your life is crucial and not very easy for me in particular. Okay. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for everybody who joined. Thank you especially to the folks who are watching on Patreon. It's just, I've only been back on Patreon for like a couple of months, but it's been really wonderful to like grow this community, especially like the fact that you can join for free now and, then talk and all that kind of stuff. Do live streams with the live chat and everything. And thank you especially, of course, to our paid pals. Like you keep the lights on, you make this possible. So I really, really appreciate it. And you also make it possible for me to offer things like the production handbook and scripting handbook and all of our templates on budgeting and production planning and all of that kind of stuff free. Because, I could be selling those probably, but I think it's important that people have access to these resources. And so if you are an aspiring creator and you haven't found those resources yet, atypicalartist.co/resources. Thank you so much for joining, everybody. Make sure to join next month. And of course, I'll be live streaming next Friday as well. I think first Friday of the month, I think is one of our public streams. I'm doing a new schedule now. And I'll maybe be playing some Life is Strange because it's been a while since I've played any video games on here. So, thank you all so much for joining. Oh, I'm so glad that you're inspired, Mike. I hope you got home safe. And I hope that everybody has like a truly fabulous weekend. So goodbye, everybody. Good luck with your projects. And if you have a podcast out there, send it to me. I want to hear it.